What's going on, guys? This is episode 5 of Dispersing the Cloud. I renamed all these book reviews Dispersing the Cloud because of my buddy Joey and his description of what it felt like when you can't remember the words that are coming out of your mouth. I am extremely tired. I spent some of last night and the better half of today driving to Southern California, so that's where I am now. We got a recording session tonight, and I started this one a little early because I wanted, because I put it on Twitter and I put it on Facebook and I put it on Instagram that I would start at 1:30. So I'm like 30 seconds behind, 40 seconds behind, and I'm just trying to find the outline. The outline that I have for this bad boy, and I can't seem to find it, so we're probably just going to go without an outline. That seems more or less like what I should do. Okay, so this last week, what did I do this last week? We had a couple gigs. I played last night in Lodi, which was fantastic. I got to play for Vine and Branches last night. That was awesome. I played with a band called Awaken Worship. Coming up this week, obviously we have recording tonight. And then I get to spend some time with the church down here, OCC. I get to visit them on Sunday. And this is going to be a nice little relaxing break from me actually doing worship. So that's kind of awesome. I'm going to move this video back just a little bit because I feel like I'm crouching just to get in the frame here. There we go. That's a little better. So this is week number 5, and I think we're on book number 9. I'm feeling pretty solid about how fast I'm going through these books. I only did one book this week. I've been doing roughly about 2, sometimes 3 a week. Part of the reason is I got some journals, and I'm going to start journaling everything that I read. So each book that I read is going to get a page or 2 or 3 in these journals, and the plan is by the end of this year, I'll have 2 or 3 journals with 60, 70 plus books in there to where I can revisit topics and come back to them. So during my break, just reading one book, I actually got to sit down and I got to journal some of the books that I had read previously. Going back to process on the books that I read, or on last week's book was 0 to 1, I really started to get a flow of a consistent theme throughout all these books. Everybody's saying the exact same things, and I found that pretty remarkable that regardless of race, regardless of income, regardless of any other outside influences, all these people who are writing these books are saying the exact same things about what it means to be successful and what it means to build groups of people that accomplish certain things. So that was very cool for me. Second thing on process, I got a lot of projects coming up, which is really cool. I got a couple businesses that I'm starting with some friends that are outside of what I normally do. We have Fragoza Media and Entertainment is kind of expanding a little bit as well to do some stuff for YouTube, to do some more work with children's books and work with different musicians. So a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe. I'm pumped about that. During these live broadcasts now, I'm going to attempt to do commentary while I'm talking. So I have it set up now to where if you guys write questions, I can actually hop on here and I can see your questions come in. Hopefully that will be a common theme. Jumping to the book that we did this week. This week's book was The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. For those of you who don't know who Josh Waitzkin is, if you've ever seen the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, it is actually, it's him. It's Josh Waitzkin. The movie was based off of his journey in chess and how he went from just being a child who kind of got chess to someone who, like a competitor, a world champion, a national champion, chess competitor, and the whole psychological battles that went on with learning chess. Well, I believe around the age of 18, 17, somewhere around there, he walked away from chess. He wasn't feeling it, I guess you could say. The fame was too much. He needed something else. He went into Tai Chi, which is kind of interesting for me as someone who comes from a semi-martial art, wrestling, a very physical sport. With him getting into Tai Chi, he started to notice things as he was doing his practitioner and really learning Tai Chi. He would be doing his meditation, he called it, or his Tai Chi movements. If you guys don't know, Tai Chi is the one where you see people going back and forth with their wrists like this, and they're connecting wrists. It ventures into push fighting a lot like wrestling. Super interesting, super cool. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos on it too. But one of the things he noticed, he said that he got to a certain level in his Tai Chi that he started having breakthroughs in his chess game. And the whole book is this idea that everything is connected with an ebb and flow. Everything is interconnected. Kind of like last week I talked about, as I got so many books in a row that I'm reading, I start seeing all these little dots connected, and I had this big breakthrough in information, basically. And I feel like the cloud's gone. Josh is explaining the exact same thing, but he's saying that through his Tai Chi, he was making connections and having breakthroughs with his chess. I found this particularly interesting because I have done the same thing in wrestling and music. For those of you who don't know, I was a national champion in high school, so I got to a pretty high level in wrestling. In college, I got fairly decent accolades in college. I was a NAIA All-American and University All-American. Some of the stuff in this book, just to change thoughts real quick, some of the stuff in this book I noticed in my own learning, in my own competition, my own weakness. It calls me out on a lot of stuff, and I'm like, man, I see that in my game, and that's part of the reason that I failed. We'll jump on some of that stuff, but back to my original thought, he sees this connection in my music and in my wrestling. My place of peace is just on a keyboard, and I'll get on a keyboard and I'll just be playing and I'll be singing, but I'll have breakthroughs in movement or a wrestling position because I still coach and I still help out, and so it's always on my mind and in the back of my mind, and I'll be playing a song and I'm like, oh, whoa, I just figured out what I need to tell so-and-so about his game, and I just realized that he needs to be doing this in his wrestling. Why I thought of it while I was playing music, I have no idea. And vice versa. I'll be wrestling and come up with an amazing idea for a song and be like, oh, I got to write this down before. In the middle of practice, I'll go to my phone and I'll have to type something down because it's just an amazing concept for a song, but I'm in the middle of teaching technique or wrestling or practicing. And it's this very interesting, interconnective well, I guess you could call it, that he's tapped into, and he explains a lot in this book. My notes are fairly good on this. Like I said, I'm a little exhausted and I'm a little behind schedule on having everything laid out, but I do have some topics that I kind of wanted to talk about that he goes over. Dispersing the Cloud. He actually talks about this, and I've heard a couple other people talk about it feels like a fog is being lifted off of them when they hit a massive breakthrough in whatever they're doing. And it's kind of like what the cloud is, dispersing the cloud. That's the whole goal of what we're doing, is to have those massive breakthroughs. And I thought it was interesting that he actually mentions that. He uses a different word as far as this fog being over him and just lifting. But he's talking about the same thing, dispersing the cloud. I thought that was great. When he gets into the intricate parts of learning, because the whole book is called The Art of Learning, he's talking about understanding the micro, the very small, to have a larger picture understanding of the macro. So he talks about these Tai Chi movements that he's doing, for push fighting, and they are very small, they are very minuscule, but he is focusing so much energy on them to understand how his wrist is turning up ever so slightly. And he does that motion for hours, until it just becomes part of him. He uses the phrase numbers to leave numbers. In chess, each piece has a number given to it. And when you're just starting chess, apparently, I don't know much about it, I'm just regurgitating what I learned from the book. When you're starting out in chess, you see the numbers and they have values, and as you swap pieces out, you're kind of counting in your head. After a while, after you gain a bigger understanding of the game, you no longer count in your head. It's almost like you feel what the numbers should be, or how the numbers go, and that's how he explains numbers to leave numbers. You've done it so much that it's inside of you. You don't have to react. It just happens. He quotes I guess it would be a Chinese philosopher. I don't have the exact quote here with me, but he says, "If my opponent doesn't move, I do not move. But at his slightest move, I move first." And it has this idea of feeling. For anyone who's wrestled, this is how I kind of internalized it. While I'm wrestling someone, I can see a hole in my game. I can feel a hole in my game, or a hole in my stance, or what's going on, before he feels it. So if I feel it, right before he feels it, I already know, let's say I'm exposing my lead leg. I feel a high C coming, right? Or he's going to reach down and grab my leg. I feel it. So I know he's already going. So instead of waiting for him to reach, I move my hand to block his high C, or his hand coming in. It would seem like I'm one step ahead of him, which I am on a very... It seems like I'm reading his mind. How did he know that I was going to go for that high C? Well, I already felt the hole in my game before you saw it. So that was a really interesting concept to me, and it was nice to see someone else make those connections. And it's not just Josh. He's quoting Tai Chi masters from eons back, thousands of years that have wrote this stuff, and it's just amazing philosophy. One of the other things that I wrote down here for athletes and for people in general is that as an athlete, we must be willing to invest in loss. This is something that in my wrestling career, very early on in college, I didn't understand and I didn't handle very well as an athlete. I came away from a wrestling career where my last 2 years of competition, I maybe lost 12 times total in 2 seasons. And I went into a college arena where I was a much smaller athlete. I was 112 pounds in high school, and I went to 125 pound in college, and I didn't yet weigh that. And it was very difficult for me to accept loss when I felt like I was just being overpowered, and I didn't feel like there was much skill that I didn't have. And for a while, that plagued me in my college career. I didn't become successful until probably my 5th year of competition in college. And for some of you who know me, I was like a super senior. I wrestled 3 years at Fresno State. Basically, 3 years at Fresno State with 1 redshirt year. So that's 4. I had 1 year left. And I had they cut the program. I ended up going to NAIA. And they split that year into 2 seasons. So my 5th year of being in college, I finally kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough to where it's like, okay, I actually won some matches. But it took me a while to be okay with losing. I remember the first 3 losses of my super senior year, and I still had 1 more following year after this. The first 3 losses, I tried to wrestle my game and just lost to people who weren't better than me. I just lost. And I remember telling myself, you know what? I've lost so much in the last 4 years. What's the point? I'm just going to go out planning to lose, and I'm going to learn how to lose by 1. I'm going to learn how to lose a match in overtime. My losses were always like, I'd score 7, he'd score 8. I'd score 15, he'd score 14, or vice versa. And I had no problem. I had no problem scoring points. I always had problems stopping people from scoring on me. So I decided, I'm just going to invest in loss. And I went out with the next 3 or 4 matches just planning to lose and just learning about myself as an athlete. And in those 3 matches, I lost one. I won one in overtime. I lost the next one. And then I pinned the third kid. I'd been in college for 5 years. Like I said, I was a national champion in high school, and my freshman year of college, I was a red shirt, and I took 3rd at the University Nationals, which is a pretty big deal. I want to take that back. I took 4th, but still a very big deal to be placing as a freshman in a national tournament like that. I hadn't gotten a pin yet in college, and that was my first pin. I think I was like 22 years old, and I remember just having this breakthrough of like, okay, like I can do this again. That was the year that I actually ended up All-American in that year. But it's this idea of investing in loss. If we're not willing to lose, then we're never going to be successful in it. And that's something I learned very, very late in my college career. One of the quotes that's in this book is Michael Jordan. A lot of people don't know this about him. He made more winning shots than any other NBA player ever. And what people really don't know is he also missed more last game losing shots, I guess it would be, than any other NBA player in the history of NBA. In order to be the guy, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and be openly willing to lose. Failure creates the greatest people among us. Failure created Michael Jordan. If he wouldn't have gotten cut from his basketball team in junior high, then he wouldn't have been driven to be great. Failure built Oprah Winfrey. If she wouldn't have been fired from a news station, she wouldn't have went on and become the person she is today. So that was a great part of this book. Great ones are willing to be burnt time and time again. Well, they sharpen the irons that are in their fire. The great ones understand that loss actually sharpens the iron that you have burning. So I thought those ideas were great. Meditation, I'm saying it out loud so I can remember to come back to it. I'm going to come back to that one. Josh Waitzkin talks a lot about it. Death over breath. Pulling into the micro to understand the macro. We already did that. What else we got here? This is huge. Connecting physical recovery to mental recovery. So he actually started using a lot of the stuff that he learned in martial arts, his physical recovery methods, his breathing techniques, lowering his heart rate, all the above, to actually mentally recharge himself. He talks a lot about creating habits and leaving markers for ourselves. He told one story of a man he is helping in not sports psychology, but basically business psychology. And he asked the guy, he said, what is the most tranquil part of your day? The guy said, when I play catch with my son. He said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a trigger for you. So we know that the best feeling you ever have is playing catch with your son. So what we're going to do is, first, you're going to do some meditation. And we'll jump into the meditation thing after this. You're going to do some meditation, 10, 15 minutes. Then you're going to do 10, 15 minutes of stretching. Then you're going to eat a snack you enjoy, shake. It happened to be a shake in this particular instance. Then you're going to listen to Bob Dylan, because that's what they picked. It's your preference on music. Then you're going to play catch with your son. So you're going to do these 4 things. Then you're going to play catch with your son. And you're going to do that for 2 weeks. And what you're doing is you're building a trigger to, when I meditate, when I stretch, when I drink this snack, when I listen to Bob Dylan, I feel like this. Plays catch with his son. Does that for 2 weeks. He says, okay, we're going to keep the trigger the exact same thing, but now, before you have a big meeting, these meetings he was getting flustered in. And before you have a big meeting, you're going to do your trigger. You're going to meditate, you're going to stretch, you're going to drink your snack, you're going to listen to Bob Dylan on the way to work. When you get to work, You're going to have your meeting, and that same feeling of just peace, calm, joy, ecstasy, all the above is going to attach itself to that trigger. And then generally speaking, what you do after that is you just slowly chop down the trigger. So if you're meditating for 15 minutes, now it's 10. Stretching for 10, now it's 5. You have a little bit of a snack, right? Or maybe change the snack and still listen to Bob Dylan, and you still get the feeling. Until you've cut it down, you've chopped it down to you're doing 2 minutes of meditation, 1 quick stretch, no snack, keep the Bob Dylan, you get the feeling. Really interesting concepts. I thought it would be extremely helpful to athletes. And that kind of leads me into the meditation thing. This is a best practice or something. I always take away something from the book. I think the meditation is something that I took away from the book. Being someone who, a person of faith, the Bible talks about meditation all the time with the assumption that we all know how to do it. I had never really meditated. Like, I've tried it. There's a book called Crazy Love that actually helps out. It's a, I guess you could say it's a religious, or it's a book about faith. I wouldn't even call it a religious book, but it's an abstract book about faith and has a lot to do with meditation. I need to revisit that book. I probably should knock that one out in the next couple weeks. But I've never been taught how to meditate, and for anyone who hasn't done it, it's very difficult. I had a buddy introduce me to an app called Headspace, and Headspace is basically a step-by-step walkthrough meditation. So I've used it the last 2 nights, and I kind of best practiced, adopted this over to me. Some of the most stressful times for me is at night. I can't go to sleep. My head's going a million miles an hour, especially after reading all these books, traveling all over the place, trying to do like 6 or 7 different projects. I'll get to the end of the day, and I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I just want to play video games. I just want to unstress. About 8 o'clock, I'm exhausted, but I'm never home by 8. I'm never, wherever I'm going, I'm never there by 8, right? It's always like 9:30, 10, and by that time, I'm starting to get my second wind, then I'm up till 2 a.m., and then I got to get up at 7, and it's horrible. So I tried this for the first time on Thursday, on Wednesday night. And I turned on the Headspace, and I did it laying down because I'm going to bed. Man, 10-minute meditation session. I was out in 6. I woke back up when the guy like said something, because there's a period of like 3 minutes in there where you're just supposed to be like focusing on your breathing and not talking, and not doing anything else but just like focusing on the breathing. I was out. He said something else like, okay, now feel your feet. And I was like, bro, I was already done. I was out. I did it last night too. I was actually sleeping on my buddy's couch last night because I was in Fresno visiting him on the way down here. And again, I was just out in like 6 or 7 minutes. So I think I might have found my new way to sleep, which is awesome and makes my life way easier. Takeaways from this book: the connecting mental recovery and physical recovery was huge. There's lots of good stuff, and there's too much stuff in this book to cover. This was another one like 0 to 1, where I'm going to buy this book physically and highlight some stuff and just keep it and keep visiting it and going over my notes. Yeah, it's just too good. 5-star for sure. We'll say 4.5 because we changed the rating last time. I want a 5-star to be blowing my mind. So 4.5 means this is an amazing book that everybody should have, especially an athlete. If you're an athlete at any level, you need to be reading this. I have a couple athletes on our wrestling team that I help out with, that I volunteer with in Calaveras, that could definitely benefit from some of the stuff written in this book. Amazing book. The next book I'm reading is The Power of Broke by, I can't even think of the dude's name now. Shark Tank guy, creator of FUBU. I'm reading that by him. I'm a couple chapters in, so I'm pumped about this. Next coming week, I'm trying to think if I'll be back. I'll be back in Northern California. We'll be gearing up for hopefully some big news coming up. I know you guys don't have Josh and the Sock Army books yet. They've already been ordered. I'm just waiting on them, and I know Far North should have been released already. I'm just waiting on the studio. So I'll put up some videos of recording tonight. I'm going to put up some videos from last night's show. I'm probably going to take a nap first. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty exhausted. Going to knock out, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, leave comments. I had some great comments on last week's video. Suggestions for books. Please shoot those over. If you're not following me on Instagram, if you're not following me on Twitter, Snapchat, hit those up. I'm always posting new videos, new stuff. I'll talk to you guys next week.